Samson, for some reason, thinks that it's a good idea to scoop out the honey and eat it. Samson was the strongest character in the Bible, but his story wasn't just about his muscles. No, his story was actually about how not to use God's calling. So we have just recently wrapped up the story of Ezra. We just finished the whole book of Ezra, and it was very good. If you haven't watched it yet, I'd recommend that you go watch that after this. But yeah, recently I've been feeling called to retell old stories that we heard in Sunday school, including Samson and Delilah, Noah's Ark, King David, Daniel in the lion's den, all these stories that we heard in Sunday school, but we haven't really read since then, At least for me, I haven't read these stories in a very long time. And I feel like God just wants me to retell these stories and refresh all of our minds. So yeah, I'm going to be reading about the whole story of Samson, not just Samson and Delilah today. And so that starts in Judges 13. I'm kind of just going to do a little summary of each chapter. And yeah. So to begin, the Israelites were doing evil in the Lord's eyes. So he gave them into the hands of the Philistines, right? And he gave them to them for 40 years. And then there was a man named Manoah. And Manoah and his wife were unable to get pregnant. So an angel came to Manoah's wife and said, "You are going to have a son." And he gives them more instructions on what she doesn't need to eat while she's pregnant, so that the kid is healthy when it comes out. And then let's see. And then something cool happens. Manoah offers to feed the angel, and it says, "I'm going to stay, but I don't want your food." He says, "Instead, offer your food upon to the Lord." And so he does. And then Manoah asks the angel for his name. And the angel says that my name is too wonderful for you to comprehend. And I just think that's really cool. Like the angels' names are so incredible that our human brain can't understand what's going on. So Manoah offers young goat and grain to the Lord. And then the angel actually ascends in the fire. And this freaks the people out. So they fall to their faces and they start worshiping. Hopefully God, hopefully not the angel, because that'd be better if they started worshiping the angel instead of God. Anyways, so then Manoah thinks he's cooked. That's what I wrote. Manoah thinks he's cooked, but then his wife says they're not cooked. And then she has the son and names him Samson, and the Lord's Spirit begins to stir him. And that's the end of chapter 13. And that's the birth of Samson, right? And then we go into chapter 14, which is titled Samson's Riddle. This chapter is very odd and kind of weird, but I really like it. So it begins, and Samson sees a pretty girl, and he tells his parents to go fetch her for me. And she was a Philistine, right? And if you remember that the Israelites had to go into captivity into the Philistines for 40 years. So yeah, she's not exactly someone that Samson's parents are going to like. And so his parents say, "No, marry an Israelite or someone from our tribe," right? Don't go marry a Philistine. But what they didn't know was that this was actually God's plan. He was going to use this situation to destroy the Philistines. Verse 5, as Samson and his parents were going down to Timnah, a young lion suddenly attacked Samson near the vineyards of Timnah. At that moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him, and he ripped the lion's jaws apart with his bare hands. So this is where we first see Samson's strength, and he literally rips apart this lion with his bare hands. That's insane, but it was only because that the Lord's Spirit was on him. So he couldn't just do this by himself. It was because the Lord was using him, right, to protect him. He did it as easily as if it were a young goat, which I don't know why they knew that, because what were they doing tearing apart young goats' jaws? I don't know. That's still kind of weird. But anyways, but he did not tell his father or his mother about it. I don't know why you wouldn't tell your parents about that. He's probably just in shock. When Samson arrived in Timnah, he talked with the woman and was very pleased with her. So he still wants to marry this woman. Later, when he returned to Timnah for the wedding, he turned off the path to look at the carcass of the lion. So this is the lion that he killed earlier, remember? So this is a little bit later, like say a few weeks went by, and he goes back to look at this lion. And when he looks at it, he realizes that there's bees inside of it. And these bees have started making honey. And Samson, for some reason, thinks that it's a good idea to scoop out the honey and eat it. Yeah, I don't know why he did that. It's kind of disgusting. And then he also gave some to his mom and dad. And he didn't tell them where he got it from. That's just wicked. Weird. Anyways, that's what I meant by this chapter is very strange. And so then Samson goes on to throw a party because they're getting married. And this is in the land of the Philistines, right? And here we go. So Samson said to them, "Let me tell you a riddle. If you solve my riddle during these 7 days of the celebration, I will give you 35 linen robes and 30 sets of festive clothing. But if you can't solve it, you give me what I just said." And all right, they agreed. "Let's hear your riddle." So he said, "Out of the one who eats came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet." We already know where this is going. This is disgusting. So then they go on to threaten Samson's wife, because 3 days later, they still don't know what the answer is. And on the fourth day, they're like, "Hey, if you don't get your husband to tell us, then we're going to burn your father's house down with you inside of it." That's insane. So then Samson's wife came to him in tears and said, "You don't love me. You hate me. You have given my people a riddle, but you haven't told me the answer." He says, "I haven't given the answer to my father and mother either. Like, why would I tell you?" And so she cried whenever she was with him and kept it up for the rest of the celebration. So this is supposed to be like they're getting married, and she's just crying the whole time because she knows she's going to die. And on the seventh day, he told her the answer because she was tormenting him with her nagging. This is also foreshadowing to whenever Delilah comes along. Samson has the worst luck with women in the Bible. Like, I swear, it's insane. Like, he has no good luck with these women. Then she explained the riddle to the young men. So before sunset on the seventh day, the men of the town came to Samson with their answer. "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" If you remember that weird little point in time where Samson ate the honey from the lion. That's what this riddle's about. He's so weird. I don't understand why. He's an odd guy, it seems like. But anyways, so Samson replied, "If you hadn't plowed my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle." So basically, if you hadn't spoken to my girl about this, then you wouldn't know the answer. And so they're cooked. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. He went down to the town of Ashkelon, killed 30 men, took their belongings, and gave their clothing to the men who had solved his riddle. So he stuck to his word, but he killed 30 men in order to do so. Okay, so Samson, after this happened, he went back and lived with his parents because he wasn't very happy about this whole situation, right? And so his wife's father was like, "Well, whatever, I'm going to give you to his best man," which is absolutely absurd. And Samson didn't know this. So that happens, and that's the end of chapter 14. I'm telling you, that's a weird chapter, but it's really interesting. So, chapter 15. So Samson, later on, he goes, hey, I'm going to go into my wife's room and sleep with her. But her father wouldn't let him in. Why? This is why. I truly thought you must hate her, her father explained. So I gave her in marriage to your best man. Now, Samson is an elite crash out artist. This was the worst thing that anyone could have done. So because of this, Samson is very frustrated. And he goes and he captures 300 foxes. 300. How do you even find 300 foxes? I can't even find one. And whatever. So he grabs them and ties their tails together, right? And he fastened a torch to each pair of tails. And then he sent them to go run through their crop fields and burn all their crops down. He's a menace to society. That's what he is. But I mean, hey, God gave him this strength. So, I mean, he's not, I don't know what's going on. This he could be helping others and, but he's kind of focused on his women. He's obsessed with women. He needs to just chill out and stop sleeping with these women. Because there's more. There's more women to the story. It's not just this one girl. Anyways, so then the Philistines found this out, and they're like, why did he do this? And they realized real quick why he did it, so they went and burned his wife and her father. So he burned both of them. I mean, not he, the Philistines. The Philistines burned Samson's wife and her father to death simply because they were being dumb in the first place. And he just got a little angry and probably shouldn't have taken it out on them as much as he did. But that's okay. And so after this happened, right, Samson killed many Philistines, and he went and stayed in a cave. He's like a caveman. Literally, he's going to stay in a cave, killing all these people. He's an interesting guy. I love Samson. It's such a great story, but he could have used God's gift in so many different ways. But instead, he just wanted to create a wonderful story, it seems like. Anyways, so then the Philistines attacked Judah, which is, I guess, where Samson is from. And Judah's like, why are y'all attacking us? And they're like, because we want Samson. And they're like, we don't have Samson. And so then they're like, oh, he's in the cave. And so Judah's like, all right. Judah's like, all right, we're going to go get him for you. So they go and they get Samson out of the cave. And Samson's like, are you going to kill me? And they're like, no. Are you going to kill us? He's like, no. And so then Samson goes with them. They tie him up. And they go back down to the Philistines. Let me see. So there was actually 3,000 men of Judah. That's a lot of people just went down to go capture Samson. It's crazy because of how strong he was. And he was just like, I only did it to them what they did to me. Wild. But, do what you want, Samson. And so, he was pretty chill about them tying him up and stuff. And as Samson arrived to Lehi, which is what it's called, the Philistines came shouting in triumph. But the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson once again, and he snapped the ropes off of his arms as if they were burnt strands of flax, and they fell from his wrist. Then he found a donkey's jawbone, and he killed 1,000 Philistines with it. So bro just saw a random donkey's jawbone on the ground, picked it up, slaughtered 1,000 Philistines with it. And then he said a little something. He said, with the jawbone of a donkey, I've piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've killed 1,000 men. I I guess he thinks he's a poet. I don't really know. Bro just be saying random stuff. Anyways, so then Samson's very thirsty after this brutal fight with all these people. And he's like, God, I'm so thirsty. Are you just going to let me die of thirst? God's like, be for real. Like, bruh, I'm going to save you. Don't worry. And so God creates a well, and it sprouts in Lehi. And Samson was revived as he drank it. And to this day, you can actually look it up. There is a literal, thing of water in this exact spot, apparently, which is pretty cool. Like a water well. Then Samson basically just kills more Philistines for 20 years because it says Samson judged Israel for 20 years when the Philistines dominated the land. So the Philistines are ruling Israel, and Samson judged them for 20 years. So, I bet Samson wasn't very happy with them over all that time and probably did some things that God would not approve of. And that's the end of chapter 15. This is the last chapter that we're going to read. This is Judges 16. And this is where Delilah comes in. But first, there's just a random little story. And so Samson went to Philistine, the town of Gaza, and spent the night with a prostitute. What are you doing, Samson? And these men of the city heard that he came into the city, and they waited outside the house, and they were going to kill him in the morning. Samson just is a top G, I guess, and woke up at midnight and was like, I'm going to leave. So he left, and he didn't just leave. He was like, these city gates look real good. And so he ripped them off their post and carried them on his shoulders and went on top of the hill across from Hebron. And that's just that story. It's very short and random. So this is where Delilah comes in. So Samson falls in love with Delilah, right? Some random girl. And the Philistines bribe her pretty much with all this money. And they're like, find out how he's so strong. And so she goes up and she asks Samson 3 times, she's like, hey, what's your strength? And Samson's like, it's this, but it's not really that. And so he makes her look like a fool 3 times. And so she comes up and she's crying. She's like, why do you make me look so stupid? Does this sound familiar? Earlier with his other wife, when she was like, why do you make me look so stupid? Why won't you just tell me the answer to the riddle? Yeah, do you remember that? I'm telling you, he has the worst luck with women. So he's like, bruh, just leave me alone. And Delilah won't stop nagging him. And he finally gives in, and he's like, it's my hair. I was born and gifted by God, and I was dedicated as a Nazarite from birth. And he's like, if my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as anyone else. So Delilah, so Samson fell asleep in her lap, and Delilah told the people to come that night and cut off his hair. And they did, and they arrested him and threw him in prison. And when they did that, they gouged out his eyes. They cut out Samson's eyes. For no reason. I'm just being mean. Anyways, so then later on, these Philistines are celebrating because they captured Samson finally. He had killed so many of their people. And they're celebrating and they're worshiping their false god, whose name is Dagon. And they get drunk and they're like, hey, let's get Samson out here to entertain us. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this story and remember this part. So Samson comes out here. Remember, he's blind. He can't see anything. And so he's just like, And he's like, can you set me, he asked whoever's carrying him, he said, can you set me between 2 like pillars so that I can lean against them and hold myself up. Lil bro knew what he was doing. And so he's standing there. He's just like this. And he's like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. Please just give me strength one more time. And God gives him strength one more time. He's like, Father, I'm going to take myself down with everyone else in here. And so he pushed the pillars out, and the building collapsed on everyone inside of it. And it killed more people than Samson has killed ever in his lifetime. And remember that one time he killed 1,000 Philistines? So yeah, bro killed way more people than that, apparently. It was about 3,000 people in that one building that he slaughtered. So yeah, that was the end of Samson's story. He's dead now. There's no coming back. He's not like Jesus. W Jesus for coming back. Anyways, so yeah, that was Samson's story. As we learned, God can use anyone, even you. God can use me. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. He can use literally anybody he wants. That doesn't mean you're going to heaven, but he can still use you, just as he used Samson, even though Samson wanted to kill everybody because he had women trouble, girl problems, whatever you want to call it. But just allow God to use you in whatever way that he wants to. This story is not about physical strength. It's about allowing God to use you the way that he wants to. And not getting caught up in the ways of the world, the women of the world, you know? Just because you think this girl's hot does not mean that you should just jump in and marry her like Samson did. No. You need to make sure that it's God's will in everything you do. That's going places or listen to certain music. You got to have discernment, watching movies, you know? You don't need to just jump into anything. Be like, Father, give me discernment. If this is your will, then let it be done. If it is my will, definitely do not let it be done. But yeah, that's Samson's life. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace.